Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, January 19th, 2024. My name is Sam Shalhoub, and it's time for your Daily Dispatch Special Edition. We have a new guest with us today, Gmoney. He is, to say the least, well-versed when it comes to Bitcoin, and I have learned so much from him over the last few months and last couple of years that I'm so excited to bring him on the show. Gmoney, welcome.
Sam, happy to be here.
Great,
Yeah, it's awesome. Happy Friday, everybody.
great to have you here. Okay, Gmoney. So let's just jump right into it. One of the first things, as I've told you before, a lot of my followers are fairly new to Bitcoin, cryptocurrency, and so forth. And I've always made a distinguish between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency because I don't believe in cryptocurrency, but I'm a full-hearted believer in Bitcoin. So could you give our audience just a little bit some background on Bitcoin, what it is, and so forth?
Yeah, and so if we're talking about the main differences between Bitcoin and what I call shit coins, right? You have a creation that was immaculate, okay? And so some people don't like that term, but literally Bitcoin started from nothing, right? There was the Genesis block of 50 coins that are unspendable. Satoshi Nakamoto created this thing, and then he 6 days later he released it to the world. Anybody could have plugged in a computer and then started mining these coins to be rewarded in Bitcoin. And now we're, 15 years later, and we're at 93% of the monetary supply, right? We're out of 21 million coins, we're at 19.5 million or something. And so what that is that's true decentralization, right? It started from nothing, and here we are now. Now, any other coin out there, right, has a CEO, has a marketing department, and what they do is they do this thing called a pre-mine, where they'll pre-mine 70% of the supply, okay? And they'll say, hey, we'll like release some of it as an ICO to the public, but then the rest we're going to sell off. We're going to give to the shareholder. We're going to give to the president, the devs, the marketing, the blah. And so what they'll do is they'll, like Vitalik, he literally dumps ETH from his pre-mine. So what does that mean, Gmoney? Well, that means a very small group of people control the entire supply of that network, right? They control a majority of the stake in that network. And so what you're going to always have is a centralized type of Ponzi corporate structure, okay, where Bitcoin is, there's no CEO, there's no marketing department, there's no centralized authority when it comes to the rule set, when it comes to the issuance of coins. And so what you have is a truly, right, system based upon freedom and consensus by a bunch of people all across the world that agree on this rule set. And then you have other cryptos and shitcoins like Ethereum, like Solana, like Cardano, where a very small group of people can change the code, can change the rules. And so we're living in a system right now where the authorities can change the rules whenever they want, right? They can just print more money and send it to Ukraine and send it to Taiwan and send it all across the globe. So in reality, what they're doing is they're changing the rules. So I like to look at everything in terms of like a software structure, right? Bitcoin has this software structure that requires consensus for the rules to be changed, okay? Now, our Congress, it doesn't really take much to pass new laws, right? And so think about the system we live in and compare it to kind of like these structured software architectures to where, a small group of people being able to change laws, change different things inside the code is the same as like, almost kind of what we live in now, where these politicians get together and they change the rules and change the laws all the time on us. It should be very hard to change rules on us as we're playing this game of life. And with Bitcoin, there are no rulers. There's just rules that we all abide by. And so that's kind of at least a introduction into kind of some of the differences between Bitcoin and shitcoins.
Okay, great. That's a very precise and well thought out response. So there's been a lot of talk recently in the news about ETFs. Now, I don't really understand them. From my understanding, it has to do with paper exchange based on Bitcoin. So when the ETFs got approved, and everybody was so excited. I saw that Bitcoin shot up and now it's dropped back down. Can you talk a little bit about ETFs and whether they are similar to the paper trading that takes place with gold and silver and precious metals and how that works?
Yeah, so the ETFs are an exchange traded fund. They're what Wall Street uses to basically track or pin underlying assets to a specific fund. Okay, and so the Bitcoin ETF is literally tied directly to real Bitcoin. Now, the ETF was approved on January 10th. It started trading on the 11th of January. The price dumped, obviously. But now Wall Street now has access to a finite asset that trades 24 hours a day worldwide, which is kind of wild because Wall Street's never been able to, Wall Street's, they trade 24 hours a day, but they still don't trade on weekends. And so this is something new for them because they've never really had an asset class that does this.
Hmm.
So these institutions now can buy Bitcoin. They typically, now they don't hold it directly. So for people thinking they're getting real Bitcoin when they move into an ETF, you're not getting real Bitcoin. Okay, you're getting a derivative. And so when you cash out, you can only cash out in fiat terms. But there's a lot of people out there that want exposure to Bitcoin. They want to expose their portfolio to Bitcoin. And so if that's you, you might want to buy one of the ETFs. There's, a Valkyrie, there's a BlackRock, there's a Fidelity. But in essence, Coinbase is the majority custodian that holds their institutional Bitcoin for these guys. And so Coinbase is a custodian. Fidelity, I think, is the only one that self-custodies their own Bitcoin. But look, in reality, like you're still trapped in their system. Bitcoin was meant to break their system. And so what I recommend is doing self-custody. Like you can easily go learn how to pick up a wallet, buy it on an exchange and get access to real Bitcoin because Bitcoin on inside of Wall Street is really not helping us win this battle. Bitcoin in a self-custodial wallet is fully weaponized Bitcoin. And so I want people to take that power, conserve their energy, store their energy in unfuckable money. And really, don't let Wall Street buy your bags, right? Like protect your energy. But really, these ETFs or institutions can get access to it now. But in reality, you're not getting real Bitcoin. You're getting a derivative of Bitcoin. And for most people, it's easy just to open up a Coinbase, River, Strike account and just start buying it. So you don't really need to unless you're already stuck with money inside of Wall Street. But Wall Street's a Ponzi anyway. The reason people have difficulties pulling money out of 401ks and this sort of thing is because the liquidity is really not there. If you were to, if a large amount of people started pulling their money from the stock market, those guys would probably close up overnight. So, don't trust, verify, keep your own keys is what I recommend for everybody.
Okay, great. And in terms of the ETFs, there are other portions of Bitcoin that I'd like you to explain to the audience. One being hash rate. What exactly does that mean? I know it has something to do with the amount of computers that are computing, and then how does that work into Bitcoin mining? What exactly is Bitcoin mining and hash rate?
Okay. So Bitcoin mining, right? It's a global competition like a lottery. I want you to think of it kind of like a lottery, where anybody can participate in running a computer to solve the next block. Okay. Now, if you think about that, it's called
Now, what does that mean? Solve the next block.
Okay, so every 10 minutes, their kids put out a nonce, a hash that in order to unlock the next block, someone has to solve the password. Okay, it's literally random number guessing to solve the next password. But this proof of work, in essence, opens up a global competition. So if you have a large source of energy and you plug in a machine, you can then join to start attempting to solve the next block. Okay, it's a global competition, right? And really, the hash power is the amount of computers that you have in your network, in your pool, right? Hashing this algorithm, right? Random number guessing the next password so that you can get rewarded with the coins. Now, it sounds a little weird. It sounds a little out there. So I want people to keep an open mind about this because this is, in essence, truly to what, creates a unfuckable decentralized network. Okay, because right now we have a SWIFT system where America can just be like, hey, you over there, we don't like what you're doing. We're going to shut your bank account down and you no longer have an ability to transact. Or in Niger, right? In Niger, these poor people were actually digging gold out of the ground and trading it to France for French francs, which they don't even use anymore, right? These are literally pieces of paper being traded for gold, which is a real thing that takes a lot of work and effort. And so this destroys all those old paradigms to where anybody in the world can join this global network by just having a source of power. Now, not only that, but it actually incentivizes people to find the cheapest way of producing power, right? If you've got like El Salvador, they're using a volcano, literally free energy, right? They trap the heat, they funnel it into the miners, and they produce, you know, a lot of Bitcoin. And so it is a little difficult to wrap your brain around after a while, but in reality, there's no shortcuts to this. There's no shortcuts to guessing this password, funny enough. And so really everybody has to just keep guessing this password. So what that means also is that the network is super secure. Okay. Now, what that means is the miners are kind of like the military. Okay. So if someone, right, a bad actor, like maybe the Federal Reserve or some other government wanted to change the ledger, right? They wanted to say, hey, you know what? We're going to create 21 more million Bitcoins and we want to keep those coins to ourselves. Okay. They would have to produce equal or more than the current hash rate. Okay. Now, the current global hash rate for Bitcoin is literally the combined efforts of like Amazon, Google, Facebook, like literally all these huge corporations. It's actually even bigger than all of their network power put together, because these Bitcoin miners are like little supercomputers and they're ASICs. They only run one program. So you can't really switch it off and run something else. It's literally only hashing this one algorithm. And they're super, super effective because they only won this one algorithm. And so if you think about that, the network now has about almost 4 times the distributed power of the entire United States Navy. Okay. And that's massive. But what that means is that you as an individual are protected. You have access to unlimited power in cyberspace that will protect your assets, will protect your property. Okay. So you don't have to, you know, call up an army to protect your castle. You don't have to call up your arms to protect your sovereign wealth from somebody attacking it. You could literally store the wealth in your head, 12 words. And if anybody attacks the network, right, like we all like are here to defend it. And so they have to come up against all of us. And the hash rate now is just, you know, it's just going absolutely bonkers. And so think of hash rate as like the military, the actual security of the network. And so the more power it uses is actually a good thing. It's a security feature, because the more power it uses, the more power someone else would have to use to try and just, you know, basically change the ledger to do something nefarious. And at this point, it doesn't make any sense to do that, because it would actually be, you know, they'd actually be more incentivized just to mine the network if they were going to attack it at this point. So there's a lot going on there, but these are good questions for newbies to help try to understand and wrap their brain around this new network system of how that works.
Right. So in terms of store of value, I think you've explained that pretty well in terms of not being able to mess with it, right? Well, I've reported in the last few months about Bitcoin mining operations in Russia, the Pittsburgh here in the US, where they're using nuclear power to supply the energy necessary for this Bitcoin mining. So if nothing else, if this was a farce, if this was some ridiculous attempt to do something crazy, why would Russia, why would the US put that kind of funds into something to mine Bitcoin unless there was something really significant behind it, I would think.
Yeah, look, anybody can join this network, right? The US dollar is a shitcoin because people in Washington and New York can just print it without any kind of sacrifice or energy, right? They're literally alchemists printing energy. And what that means is other countries, in order to get access to this piece of paper that we just print, right, have to produce something. They have to provide their own proof of work to get access to this money. They don't have to do that anymore, right? They could literally think of other ways to provide this proof of work, like maybe finding a cheap power source, plugging in some machines, and they can just say, hey, Washington, go F yourself, right? We're going to switch over to this other network that we don't have to trade our lifeblood for your paper that is going to zero, right? Inflation. We can now mine the superior asset, and nobody can stop us, right? Literally nobody can stop us from joining this global network because your rules don't apply to us, right? This is a global network that is open source, that is protected by military technology, SHA-256, the hashing algorithm that protects the network. And it's just really access to the internet and power is really all one needs to join this global competition.
It's interesting that you brought up the fiat system. I remember literally, I've been in this fight for almost 40 years. And I remember, 25 years ago when I explained to people that when we took ourselves off the gold and silver standard, that was bad enough. But when they instituted fractional banking, all of a sudden, a 1-to-1 ratio goes from 1-to-1 to 1-to-9. It's uncontrollable. It's unsustainable. And now I think we're just seeing the byproduct of what's taken place back in the early 70s and going back to 1913. So it sounds like Bitcoin is a store of value that people can trust.
Yeah, there's no counterparty risk, right? When you go put your dollar inside of a banking institution, they have a 0.0 reserve ratio. And what that means is if you go put $100 in the bank, they can lend out $100 times 10. Okay. And then think about that. If they lend out $100 times 10, and then you take that $100 and go put it in another bank, well, they can loan that out 100 times 10, right? And so you have all these double spend transactions happening all across, America or the world actually. And if they don't have the reserves and people come to take cash out, they can't service everybody, right? They keep a liquidity pool of what they think people will want when people need money. Now, we saw what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, where they literally collapsed overnight because there was a bank run. So fractional reserve banking, they rely on IOUs. Okay, so you get an IOU from your bank. Now, your IOU is on a ledger, right? That is like basically vaporware, okay? Because you can't really verify the money is there. Now, if you go there and get your money, right, you're just pulling from the current liquidity that that institution has. Now, with Bitcoin, when you hold your own keys and you hold your own Bitcoin, like you can physically and identify your coins are there, right? Like there's nobody lending that out. There's nobody fractional reserving what you have. Like you have this asset that nobody can take or lend or do anything with because you have your own keys. And so that's important to understand because the system you are in is a Ponzi, right? Because if everybody were to come and cash out, the banks would not have the money. And people need to realize, like, if you have a lot of money in these institutions, I don't think anybody's coming to save you. Like, if you are not aware that you are literally in a system that doesn't have the liquidity to pay you out if everybody were to come and get their money, that might cause a problem. Like, I'd be worried about it. I don't have a lot of money in the bank. Now I have my minimum amount to pay my bills, and I still have to use the fiat system to some degree. But other than that, like I'm really opting out because I don't want to keep my energy, my time in a system that is corrupt and filled with evil people, basically.
Right, right. And it's interesting. You brought up derivatives, and the last count that I looked at, it's in the cotillions in terms of derivatives. And when we look at the stock market in terms of hypothecation of the stocks, I think you're right. If people came in and said, "Give me my money," whether it's in the stock market or whether it's in the banks, they'd be done overnight. I think Bitcoin avoids that issue, right?
Yeah, there's no counterparty risk. And so, yeah, I mean, you've seen that movie, A Wonderful Life, right? They're literally calling for the bank to give them their money and they don't have it.
Yeah.
And so people really need to get educated about this because I'd rather be a couple years or even a couple months early than a day late because
Yeah.
by the time it happens, like you're not going to be able to get your funds out. You're going to be last to the party. It's going to be too late because we live in this information technology age, right? Where things happen really fast. When you pull your money out and move it, like it's instant. And if you think about that, the velocity of that makes it a lot quicker for a lot of people to all pull their money out at the same time. So it's much, much quicker. But yeah, Bitcoin is a global network. And so when you open up your own Bitcoin address with a wallet like a Trezor or something, you're literally opening up a bank account in cyberspace, right? To where it's a sovereign parallel system that is unfuckwithable, right? You can't somebody can't come in and pull all the Bitcoin out and rug you, right? Your Bitcoin is your Bitcoin once you're in that part of that system. And so anybody can open up an account in cyberspace. There's no age requirements. There's no ID checks, right? There's no phone numbers. You don't have to like set up all the social security numbers. No, you literally just pick up a cryptographic key pair, a seed phrase, and you're able to join this global network. Now, to get access to the exchanges, to buy and sell Bitcoin, obviously you need some of that data. But once you transfer that energy, that Bitcoin off the exchange into your own wallet, you are a free sovereign citizen, right? You in that realm of this parallel system.
Right, right. Very well stated. So there are portions of Bitcoin, such as the blockchain, right? Can you talk a little bit about what blockchain is and how it relates to Bitcoin?
Yeah. So a lot of people misuse the term blockchain, right? Anything can have a blockchain. Okay. Just because you have a blockchain doesn't really mean your network or system is secure. Okay. It's just a way to keep a database that uh, is kind of in a time chain, right? Blockchain is kind of a misnomer. Right? Bitcoin is really a time chain. And so what that means is that if you have a blockchain on a centralized system like Ethereum or Cardano or Solana or something like that, the powers that be, right? Back to consensus, back to the small group of people controlling things, they can stop the network. They can freeze transactions. They can shut the network down and be like, hey, we don't like what they're doing over there. We don't, something happened. So we're going to freeze that account, or we're going to freeze those funds. And so, like, what actual advantage do you have with blockchain at that point when they're actually being able to freeze funds, stop the network, censor transactions? Really, it doesn't really matter. And so Bitcoin is different. I like to tell people it's Bitcoin, not blockchain. And Satoshi actually even called it time chain. He didn't call it blockchain. He called it time chain because certain things in the past, it's like an incorruptible historical ledger, if you want to put it that way. Okay. And so what that means is events in the past can never be changed. Okay. So that chain of events is locked into history forever, right? You can't go back and rewrite history. And so with other blockchains, right, they can go back and rewrite their history. And they can be like, oh, you know what, we kind of messed up here and we didn't like what happened. So we're going to rewrite history and we're going to change those blocks. But in essence, right, the data from a previous block goes into the next block, and it's required to even create that next block. Like the information is kind of time chained together, daisy chained together. And so for someone to undo that, right, they would have to go back in history and like undo all these extra blocks. And so it becomes basically impossible to do that. It becomes impossible to corrupt the network or change the historical ledger of Bitcoin. And so when I think of blockchain, it's kind of like a normie term for like, hey, we have something new and fun, and like, maybe Wall Street likes because we say that, so we're going to pump our stock. But in essence, blockchain is bullshit because in most of the time, like a database is just cheaper to keep. You don't need blockchain for a database. And a lot of these other cryptos, shit coins, they solve problems that we don't really like have it. There's no like need for it. Like there's no need to keep a database of like JPEGs that are all like on the blockchain, right? Like you could just use a database for that. It's not really making it any more attractive. And so I like to kind of think in those terms, time chain, not blockchain, and think of an incorruptible historical ledger. Imagine if humans actually had the ability to once and for all have a history of events that nobody could change, right? We're learning all the time about what happened in the past, and that we've been lied to for a long time about what things have happened. And so, the first block actually has it. It talks about the chancellor on the second bailout of banks, right? And that history is forever enshrined in the Genesis block. And so nobody can go back and change that history. We all have the same copy of it. And so, yeah, I like to think in those terms when we talk about blockchain and we talk about Bitcoin and we talk about more of it as a time chain.
Okay, great. And then let's talk a little about non-fungible tokens. I don't really understand them. I understand that they somehow are similar to blockchain or Bitcoin or at some level, but what exactly is an NFT? And is it just garbage? Is it something that we should pay attention to?
Definitely something you need to pay attention to. Now, these assets I have over my shoulder, Andrew Jackson, right? Donald Trump, these are Bitcoin NFTs. Now, NFTs are basically a smart contract. Okay. And so what I want people to think of when they think of NFTs is don't think of it as like these images. You think of it as common shares of stock. Okay, when you go buy a share of Google stock, right? You go to Fidelity or something and you purchase the stock and you own a percentage of that company. Okay. NFTs are kind of like the same thing, right? There's this entity that has a portion of the supply of whatever of this token. And when you own that token, you own a percentage of the total supply, like a share of stock. And so I think of everything in kind of the game theory, 40,000 foot view of how we're going to defeat this enemy. And if the central bankers are like the top of the evil of the food chain, right? They've got their henchmen, the henchmen that enact their policy and give money out and rig systems that are kept to enslave us. And so Wall Street is a big part of that indentured servitude, right? That slavery aspect of how they keep us at bay with 401ks and the IRAs and all the bullshit products they sell to us to further enslave us in their monetary system. And so if you are thinking about changing the world, we have to eliminate Wall Street. Okay, now that's a tough pill for people to swallow. But in essence, NFTs are the antithesis of Wall Street. NFTs will literally end Wall Street. Now, how does that work, Gmoney? How are we going to like end Wall Street? Like these guys are huge and big and all this other stuff. Well, funny enough, there are some protocols out there that run on layer 2 to where me and you, right? I can create an asset, an equity, an ICO. I can crowdsource something, create a token, and then I can offer it on Bitcoin to anybody that wants to purchase it. I can offer it worldwide to, for instance, the Canadian truckers. Okay, I wanted to raise money for the Canadian truckers, but I didn't want to just like raise Bitcoin and then like send it to them. I wanted to show people like, hey, this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to make everything public so people can see that what I'm raising, I'm actually sending to them. And I created an NFT. And anybody that bought this NFT would actually send Bitcoin to an address. They got a copy of this cute little image I made with Pepe's on it in Canada. And on the blockchain, it shows that, such and such paid this, and they kind of got like a receipt, right, that they donated to this cause. And then after I sold a bunch of these NFTs, on the blockchain, you can see how much Bitcoin I raised. And then you see my address, send the Bitcoin from the address I collected them in, and I sent them directly to the Canadian truckers. And so if we think about transparency with government, we think of transparency with charities, right? None of them are transparent at all. We never get to see their books. So how are we going to enforce transparency with our leaders, right? We don't really have a lot of options. But with NFTs, smart contracts, we do now have the ability for us to placeholder things and then transact to make that possible. And so creating a token, you can take your company and you can create your own shares of stock in cyberspace, right? That nobody can fuck with. And you can then offer this and say, hey, do you want to buy into a piece of my company? If you buy into a piece of my company, you get this digital token, you're forever, percentage owner. And so you don't need to go through, the all the hoops that Wall Street makes you do to raise money. You can just do it on your own as a sovereign citizen, raise money, donate it, do whatever you want with it. Now, there is a reputational trust aspect to this, right? Like if you come out with this token on Bitcoin and someone sends money to it and you rug pull them, like that's your reputation, right? And so, when Max Kaiser talks about the volcano bond, right? He actually tokenized an NFT, right? You call it NFT, just a token. And people that are buying this get access to invest basically in El Salvador. And so it's a really cool ecosystem because we're not only destroying the central bankers, but we're destroying their henchmen that rig the system with market hours and market makers and liquidity scams and their fuckwithable line of credit that is never ending. And so we saw what happened with GameStop. And that's just a small glimpse into the fraud that really happens behind the curtain of Wall Street.
Yeah. Okay. So, and that was something I wanted to talk about with smart contracts. So smart contracts are part of the Bitcoin network.
Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin's had smart contracts since 2014. So funny enough, we've actually, Bitcoin actually had smart contracts before Ethereum, before any of that stuff. It's just a lot more hidden, and many Bitcoiners are compartmentalized to think that all NFTs are garbage. And so I look at it from a different perspective, understanding the utility of what they really mean on a network that is totally decentralized and powerful. And so NFTs on Ethereum, right? Probably not as safe because again, you're in that centralized system. You're in a system where they can control history. They can rewrite history. Bitcoin, you can't do that, right? You can't like just rewrite stuff. And so there's a second layer of Bitcoin called counterparty that you're able to transact in a peer-to-peer. It's a protocol. People can transact and issue assets and trade them back and forth. And funny enough, some of the very interesting cards are Pepe the Frog
Yeah.
with Trump on them. So that's a whole dig. If you guys are familiar with Covfefe, I've done a specific dig on Covfefe that may have a little bit more meaning than I think people realize. And so check it out. It's on the Badlands Substack, but it's called the Covfefe dig. So go check it out.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you brought up, because it sounds to me like these smart contracts, the possibility of utilizing them in many more ways than just uh, buying Bitcoin, it could be something that could exponentially grow over the near term. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, this ecosystem is going to continue to grow. And funny enough, Patrick Byrne, are you familiar with Patrick Byrne? He
I
was the
am.
CEO of Overstock. He's actually the only guy that has a patent on being able to trade smart contracts with tokens, right? Asset-backed digital tokens. So Overstock was actually approved by the SEC to convert right from the traditional system to a purely digital tokenized system.
Mhm.
And having a patent on the only architecture that the SEC has approved, well, I think we're still going to see like what's going to come out of that because it's still kind of hidden to some degree, but it's going to be a huge market for people to opt out of the current tyranny and rigged system that we have to deal with.
Do you think that those smart contracts in the second layer that you're talking about would affect Bitcoin, the monetary system, negatively, positively, or not at all?
No, I think it'll affect it positively. It's putting more value inside of that network on a second layer. And so when I say second layer, we have Bitcoin Lightning on second layer that runs off of op return. This other system counterparty is another op return layer that runs off of that. And so everything is nestled inside the main network, right? But these protocols can have, their data on separate nodes so that it doesn't clog up Bitcoin, right? With inscriptions and ordinals, like they're putting everything on layer one, which Bitcoin was meant to scale layer one, layer two, layer three, to where you're putting data in layer one, but it's really just securing these other layers. And so really, um, putting more value inside of Bitcoin through second layers is absolutely a great thing. And we're seeing that now by bringing more people into the ecosystem. Like with
Okay.
Lightning, like the entire country of El Salvador was onboarded via second layer Bitcoin Lightning. Had that not happened and they had to be on layer one, well, they, probably wouldn't be as much people transacting with Bitcoin. And so, layer twos are really good to grow the ecosystem, the network. We're growing a network.
And those mining operations, do they have anything to do with that as well? Are they still verifying the transactions?
Yeah, so Lightning is kind of where Bitcoin gets locked up into time contracts. Think of it like escrow, right? To where they're holding this amount of Bitcoin that can't be released until a certain amount of time until the two parties agree. But while that Bitcoin's kind of locked up, right, in essence, people can transact on it instantly on this second layer. So that's how it basically works.
Okay. Okay, great. So I have some other questions here, but I think we'll do that on another interview because I don't want to get too bogged down with all the intricacies of it. I really want to help people understand, number one, how to buy Bitcoin. Number two, how to hold Bitcoin sovereignly, meaning, in a cold wallet. And I'm speaking from experience. Gmoney is the person who I went to help me understand how to use a cold wallet, which I did and which I hold my Bitcoin on. So from a very simple standpoint, Gmoney, can you tell people how to buy Bitcoin? I mean, you don't have to give all the details, but how to go about it, how to hold it in a cold wallet, or what we're going to do to hold a cold wallet, and then later we can talk about how you can help them personally.
Yeah, and so really the first thing you need to do is find an exchange that has actual real Bitcoin, right? You want to deal with an exchange that you can actually move your funds off of to your own wallet. And so I typically recommend a few of them. I recommend River Financial and I recommend Strike. These are Bitcoin only institutions. Jack Mallers has done a lot to help the onboarding of the entire country of El Salvador, US based company. And River Financial, also a US based company who's, funny enough, provided the liquidity pool for the entire country of El Salvador via Bitcoin Lightning. And so these are two very well established companies that are Bitcoin only. They're true to the ethos. And so you need to set up an account and be able to transact and be able to interface so that you can plug in your bank account and trade inferior money, inferior energy for superior money, superior energy. Okay. And that's done first with an exchange. Okay. Once you've set up your accounts and you got to go through the KYC, you got to put in your social security number. It's still considered a taxable capital gains asset. Then you need to find a cold storage wallet. You need to find a wallet that is secure enough that will help you hold your own keys. Okay.
Now,
Now,
when
there's
you
a
say
lot.
wallet, will you qualify that for the audience? Meaning it's just a physical device that you hold in your hand, right?
It doesn't have to be. Now, I recommend you do buy a device because you don't want to have like these online wallets are a little bit more susceptible to hacking. You can get free wallets online and you can get like a free wallet or something like that. But I recommend a Trezor or a Jade, right? And so these are open source Bitcoin only wallets that you can, it will help you basically create your own keys on the network. Okay. And so what that means is you're holding these keys that only you have access to. And so when Bitcoin gets sent to your address, you are the only ones with the keys that can unlock that Bitcoin on the network. And so the Bitcoin doesn't actually sit right on those wallets. The Bitcoin's always on the network. The device is just your key to go to the network and unlock those coins from that network. But yeah, Trezor, Jade, both great devices, both open source, both Bitcoin heavy. Trezor has other options, but you can do a Bitcoin only mode. And the UI is super, super easy. So I only recommend open source options. Ledger, a lot of people use it, but it's closed source. And they've already agreed to work with governments in the case of being able to backdoor people's seed phrases. And so we definitely don't want that type of scenario. And so, yeah, those are the wallets I recommend. And then really it's as simple as just kind of like a copy paste, move your coins from the exchange to a wallet. Now, make sure you set it up properly. There's obviously things you need to do to make sure, you are less likely to get hacked or someone was able to steal your Bitcoin. But, once you have Bitcoin in your own wallet, like you are responsible for that money. You're responsible for that energy. If you are lazy and you take a picture of it or you put it in Microsoft Excel or you put it in your phone and someone gets those words and someone takes your Bitcoin, well, that's on you, right? You did not take the safety precautions to actually secure that energy. And so, there is a couple things you need to do to be safe about it, but it's absolutely possible that anybody can do it. And if you can send an email, like you can custody your own Bitcoin. It's not that difficult.
Great. Yeah. And like I said, you helped me personally with that. And I have been speaking quite a bit about Bitcoin on my show, on my daily show, on the interviews and what have you.
I love it,
And
brother. I love it. You just
yeah,
like,
thank
boom, activated. I love it.
yeah. Like I said, Gmoney, I've been doing this a long, long time, but it's the first time I've done it in the public arena. I have schooled people on these things, not necessarily Bitcoin, but what's going on in today's society for
Hmm.
almost 40 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And yeah, I mean, I go way back. I mean, I go back to the mid 80s when I was part of the National Vaccine Information Center.
Oh, wow.
The president at that time was Cindy Goldenberg. She's a friend of mine. She's still a friend of mine today. My brother, Dr. Mike, was a chiropractor. He woke me up in the mid 80s. And I just started reading and I started learning. And, I mean, I was talking about the Federal Reserve and all this 30 years ago. I was talking about chemtrails 20 years ago. I was talking about cancer alternatives 25 years ago. And I just, at the urging of friends and family, decided to start this. So that's what I mean by coming out to the public.
Love it.
I dig it, man. It's part of who I am. So now, as I've said, I've mentioned Bitcoin many times on my show. I can't tell you how many people ask me to personally help them buy Bitcoin and hold it. Well, I'm just not set up for that at this point. I'm a one-man show. I'm doing my best to get the word out, but you've helped me, and we went through a process to uh, secure time with you to get this done. Would you please tell the audience how they can do that with you? I'll also put the links in the descriptions on all the platforms, but will you give them a quick rundown on that, please?
Yeah, look, for those that are not comfortable with this technology, I offer kind of like a white glove concierge service to help walk you through the process. So if you would like me to walk you through, be able to ask questions, and like there's no dumb questions, right? You're learning a new system, you're deprogramming yourself from the old system. It can be scary. Like even when I first started, like I was scared to hold my coins, and like overnight I woke up in hot sweats because I didn't know if I did it right, and I didn't know if someone was going to steal my Bitcoin. And so it's nice to have somebody that you can trust that will walk you through the process so that you can sleep at night, right? And not worry that your energy is going to be stolen from you. So yeah, if you go to endthebankers.com and you want help to make sure you're doing everything properly, I offer a consultation. I'm kind of like your tour guide, right? I don't hold your Bitcoin. You don't buy Bitcoin from me. I show you, here's the best methods, here's the best practices. Here's how you won't get a rug pull. Stay away from this. Here's some videos you should watch. Here's some homework, right? And so really it's kind of like the anti-financial advisor, right? These financial advisors, they want you to keep their money with them, right? Please, please keep your money with me. I'm going to make sure I'm going to make you, we're going to go to the moon, right? And I'm like, hey, forget all that. If you want to be a sovereign citizen and you want to do it properly, I will show you, but like, I'm going to charge you for my time if, it's a consulting firm. And, but that's for people that want it. Not if some people are tech savvy enough and they think they can do it, great. But I have had people come to me and be like, Gmoney, I tried to do it myself. I lost $30,000 because I didn't listen to you. And I thought I knew what I was doing. And so look, like anybody can do that, but it is scary. And I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I'm trying to say, like, if you mess it up, right, it's on you for not gaining the knowledge needed to do it properly. And so if you want that, I'm available. And there's even like a do-it-yourself plan that I have on my site as well.
Great. And like I said, everybody, I have used Gmoney. He has been instrumental in helping me understand Bitcoin, not only from a conceptual standpoint, but physically telling me how to buy the wallet. We spent time on the phone figuring this out. I personally will recommend Gmoney. I don't recommend many people, but if you need help with this, please reach out to him. Tell him I sent you. He'll have some kind of a deal for you. And let's get this thing moving because we need to grow this network, in my opinion. So, Gmoney, what a wonderful time, man. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me and to help my audience understand more about Bitcoin. And I would very much like to have you on again in the near future if you're open to that. And
Sure.
in the meantime, where can people find you?
Sure. I'm just stoked that you're doing this, Sam, and I appreciate your time and energy into spreading the good word. I'm not on TikTok, funny enough, and so I love that you're expanding to different areas to help spread the word. And so, yeah, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at GMoneyPepe, and every Thursday night I'm on Rumble. It's called Rug Pull Radio, part of Badlands Media. And then I also run a Telegram group. So the Telegram group is kind of where all the fun happens. And the Telegram group is just at Rug Pull Radio. Feel free to join that group and come join us and hop into the chats. But we have some fun. We have some politics. We have some memes. But mostly it's a good time of good people wanting to change the financial system for the better. But you're right. It's a network. We are in network warfare. The network we're attacking is the US dollar, who's enslaved the entire planet. And so we win when our network is bigger than theirs. It's connected than theirs, right? Metcalfe's law, right? The number of connected users is equal to the square root of, blah, blah, blah. But it's network warfare. And when our network is big enough and is growing exponentially, we'll be able to defeat their network in the most beautiful way possible.
Excellent. Very well stated. Very well stated. Gmoney, thank you so much. We'll be in touch. I'll be in touch and I'll get these up on all the platforms. And I can't thank you enough. I'm looking forward to having you on again.
Great, brother. Cheers.
Thanks.